Welcome to Cancer and Peace. My name is Sean Stewart, and I'm here with Peter Scalzo, our host and extraordinaire for Cancer and Peace, who's been on his 18-year cancer journey. And we're going to have another fun conversation today. So welcome, Peter.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. Yeah.
So it's good to see that you've readjusted your wardrobe and are now...
I have a red thing on.
Yeah,
today.
Our producer and I have been mocking him this morning. So
what'd you call my wardrobe? De minimis?
De minimis, yes. And not in what it covers, but
no comment.
So yeah, we don't want to go that far. So he's a minimalist.
Minimalist.
Yes, that's what it's. But I like the fact that you called yourself de minimis. So
it just came out.
Well, it'll fit in nicely with our topic today. We haven't directly, we've talked around this quite a bit, but as we looked at our episodes and things, when we haven't talked about this specifically, and it's a concept that is stated the way it is to be fully known and fully loved. And it's such an important part of our journey. And I'll put just a touch of meat on the bone, and then I'm gonna ask you your thoughts a bit on this. But the idea is, if we're not revealing our real selves to those around us when we're on our journey, that we can't really receive love. We can't be fully loved. And stated in the opposite way, that which we put on as who we are that isn't who we are is what receives love. So in other words, if you put on a mask so that people will like you, love you, want to be around you, it's your mask that receives love, not the real you. And so I think our belief is that on a cancer journey, it's an invitation to take time to inventory that, to think about that, and to be fully loved is to start going on the path to be fully known. And so you've had some experience in that yourself. And so that's the kickoff for our conversation today, is the importance of this in a cancer journey.
Yeah, it's a great topic, Sean. And I think where I feel touched about it right now is, I mean, we've always merged together the recovery journey and the cancer journey and used tools from recovery to help us as we journey through the cancer that we have. And so I think for me, I think back to 2014 and my own personal journey, and been a Christian a long time at that point, 52 years, or no, less than that. I'm sorry, 42, whatever it was, but many years on my own personal cancer journey and never really disclosing my real self. And it wasn't until my marriage hit a crisis point, and I'm public about the fact that the marriage hit the crisis point. I don't really say what it was, but I am public about it hitting that point. And because that was what drove me into a place of powerlessness and a place of deep humility and deep hurt, knowing that I didn't have the answers. And so for the first time, with the help of a therapist and recovery, being in a step study, I did an inventory of myself. And I looked at myself with realistic eyes, not denial or what I wanted to look like. I looked at myself for who I really was, the good, the bad, the ugly. And I remember looking at my character defects and sins, and 20, just a number, but 21 bubbled up after, and ranging from things like codependency to unhealthy anger, lust, fear, resentment, just a whole host of sins and character defects that I had confessed before, but I had never admitted them, let's say, to another person, and maybe not fully to God either.
Revealed.
And so I think one of the thoughts I had was, will I be loved by God? Because I have all this brokenness within me. And so what a blessing and a treat it was to be able to reveal all these character defects, what healing it was and to just mention them to not only you guys, but to experience God's love in the process and after the process. I mean, to actually feel it at times, but to know that he fully loves me no matter what's going on, no matter what I'm doing. I'm still fully loved.
It's interesting. Yeah, you took from, well, I'll add some. One is we just did a newsletter that was on transparency for the organization that I'm leading. And I almost said Richard because you and I hung out with Richard, but Peter is a board member at, Richard's also a board member. But the newsletter, the theme of it was transparency. And it fits into this concept because transparency was really important. And it's funny, we had multiple contributors to articles for the newsletter, and when you put yours out, it was a good challenge. You were one of the first ones to get your article in as a good, like you're
obedient.
Obedient something. Yeah. Example setter.
People pleaser or something.
I don't know. Yeah. But it set the right tone because when we read your article, it spoke to a level of vulnerability and realness that you allowed yourself to be seen. And I think that is something that we all desire in our other relationships, meaning that it's hard to do that ourselves, but we want that from other people to, like, we're not wanting their fake selves. We want to hear people's real selves. But it's difficult to do. And maybe it'd be interesting to talk about the why. Why does this feel so counterintuitive that the thing that brings the most depth in relationship is the thing that we find the hardest to give? I don't know, maybe you have some thoughts on that from your own experience, but I'd like to carry that into is what draws you into being willing, or, it's not as if one day you just go, hey, I'm just going to start sharing these things. What draws you into that, which causes you to say, hey, I'm willing to be real and vulnerable? So maybe there's two questions, and maybe that's way too much because sticking to one thing at a time, but I'll let you comment on one or both.
The first one was what stops me from doing that or hinders me. Is that the right way to say it?
I think that's definitely
from doing it with my relationships. And I think for me, especially with recovery, that's easy. I mean, before I got into recovery, I was a very visible guy. Representing the church in all legal matters, lawyer out there, father of 6, elder in the church, all that stuff. And so I definitely think shame and the fear of being judged and being criticized was at the top. I can't disclose this. I mean, this person's going to try to fix me, and I'm going to feel defensive, and I'm going to feel shame and feel judged.
Yeah, the greatest enemy of wholehearted relationship, that's the Brene Brown concept. What in her research she found shame was the blocker for wholeheartedness. So
this is one of the main reasons why I love recovery, is because recovery is a safe place to do it. It's such a great open door because no one's there to fix me. Everything is confidential. Everyone's using I am me statements only. So in the safety of that group, with everyone doing their own confession, I felt free to be able to talk about myself and my brokenness. That was a gift, a huge gift for me.
Yeah.
A life-changing gift.
Yeah, so in recovery, we do discussion groups, and Peter mentioned guidelines or rules that you would use for not fixing, for confidentiality. And we like this idea of no crosstalk. So when somebody's sharing, everybody's paying attention. They're not having conversations on the side, but they're always using I and me statements also. So it's talking about from the depth of you, as opposed to we know that it's no, I know, I feel, I see, and so when I start talking in the I'm having to reveal how I feel about something or what I believe about something or who I am.
Yeah, and the guideline questions that I just looked at that you guys have, it said, I'm an expert on me, not on you.
That's such a good thing.
Yeah.
The reason why I mentioned that is I don't know that it's not the most important part, but it's something to think about, is that I think of this as training wheels. So if you learn to ride a bike, you might have had training wheels so that you don't fall over. so you don't hurt yourself or you don't get hurt. Now, training wheels can be dangerous also, but I think in the grand scheme of things, we put training wheels on bikes with small kids so they can learn how to start moving around and get used to the bike and feel a sense of something, and then eventually we have to take the training wheels off. And in recovery groups, in my mind, the small group side of that is training wheels for learning how to be real and vulnerable, because there is a safe place. There's a safety there to being able to share and know that the people there are all going to use I and me statements. They're all going to talk about their own vulnerabilities.
Right.
They're not going to give you a fix.
Right.
Or at least that's what the guidelines are encouraging, is no fixing, no setting people straight with, hey, I got a book for you. What you need is. And so when we say fixing, that's an example. Is, hey, I share something, and immediately somebody's like, well, I read this thing that you need to read because it's going to give you what you need for your situation.
Yeah.
Which I think cancer patients probably get that a lot.
Yeah. I mean, to sort of transition over to the cancer space, you triggered something that I'm thinking about right now, but it's what about a painful event in our lives, like whether divorce, cancer, whatever, that drives us further down into a place where we contemplate this kind of thing, where we're more willing to enter into a place of realness.
Yes.
About ourselves. And so I can only speak about myself, and I know that in the context of marriage struggles, it was like, well, what's my part was a big part of this. But in the context of my cancer struggle, it was, wow, I'm in pain and I've got a lot of things swirling around and I don't know what to do with them. How do I manage myself? These emotions and all kinds of other things going on.
Yeah. Yeah, what you're talking about is, to me, I think what we've learned in this space, and we've talked about the wall or the dark night of the soul, it is pain that draws us into a willingness to start being real. And so that's why a cancer journey is an invitation into being fully known and fully loved. Is it's asking, what are you going to do with the pain? Where are you going to go with it? And pain, when it's shared, can be, there can be a level of relief there. Pain that you try to self-manage can get out of control. But when it's shared, especially when you put physical pain with emotional pain can certainly be lessened as we share the real and we're able to receive love.
Yeah. So coming back to the fully known, fully loved concept, you're the one that really brought it up, this whole concept of fully loved and fully known. We've sort of talked about it in other podcasts. So why did you bring it up, Sean, in this context?
Well, I think, as you're in a cancer journey and you're contemplating, what to do with pain, and when you start recognizing, I think when you start thinking about the meaning of life and what's going on, it becomes important to really think about depth of relationship. What do you value in relationships and people and in yourself? And I think what I was, as I've thought about it for my own self, I think it's really hard for me to be completely fully known, to allow myself to be fully known. There's a lot of areas that it's hard to release control of that. And so it's come to a place on a personal side, is that, well, there's only one real place that you can be fully known and fully loved, and that is that God fully knows you. And he's the one person who I believe has demonstrated he won't reject you, in knowing just how deep my own depravity and brokenness goes. And so it's important for a journey of peace, because we all recognize there's a level of brokenness in us that is so deep that if we were known at that level, it feels like our shame would devour us and our rejection would devour us. And I know that I've experienced that in my own life. And as I am able to admit that to God, and not be rejected still,
Mm-hmm.
then that's where peace is.
Mm.
That's like just a great place of peace that comes
Yeah.
with that. And I'm growing in my ability to share that with others,
Mm-hmm.
meaning that I think that's going to be a lifelong struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And there's people that are in my life that I can share pretty vulnerably with. There's still people that I can't because I feel like I'm going to be judged or shamed or condemned. And
Mm-hmm.
so and I think that's okay. I think this concept in the Bible of don't cast your pearls before swine
Yeah.
is still an important thing. So when I say recovery is the training wheels for real life, for me, that what I've learned is that I want to take that level of vulnerability and increase that in the public sphere. And I want to, like when I think about my marriage relationship or people that are close to that, I want that to be at a real high level of vulnerability, so that the depth of relationship is as high as it can be.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes time and energy, and it takes
Yeah.
personal examination and willingness to look at the pain. I have
Yeah.
to look at my own pain, and there's a lot there.
And I mean, just for the Christ followers out there, like as you're speaking, I'm thinking of like Job, for example, that his sadness and anger and fear come out
Yeah.
in many chapters. Wish I'd never been born. I mean, cursed be the day of the news of my birth, you know?
Yeah.
And yet God never scolds him for that. In the end, he gets fully blessed again in his life. But it's, David, for all of the things that had happened in his life, including the sins that we know about, like murder and adultery and all that. There was never a point at which you felt like God turned his back on him at all or anything
Yeah.
like
My
that.
favorite example was Peter.
Peter, tell me about that one.
Well, it's because Peter was with Jesus before he died, and he was like, I'm never going to leave you or reject you.
Yeah.
And Jesus already knew. He fully knew him. And he said, before the clock strikes 12 or whatever, you're going to have denied me 3 times. Before the rooster crows, you're going to have denied me 3 times. It was that night. And so Jesus already knew that he was lying to him. He knew the real Peter. He fully knew that this was a person who wasn't on the same journey that he was on. And we see this incredible story of afterwards, that after Jesus is resurrected and he comes to Peter while Peter's out on the boat fishing, he kind of goes back to his old thing, where I'm going to go back to fishing. And Jesus meets him on the shore, and he asks him hard questions. He doesn't avoid it. He asks him, say, do you love me?
Mm.
And he's asking Peter to examine in his own heart, like, who are you? What do you value? What are you really about? And then he commissions him, and he's like, feed my sheep, go out and feed the people that I care about, if you really love me. And Peter does off of that. And you never see Jesus condemn Peter. He doesn't scold him. He doesn't, like, Peter, you're going to hell for that denial. Like, you had your chance.
Mm-hmm.
He restores him. He shows him how much he loves him, and he commissions him. I was just like, that's me. It's like, hey, yes. How many times have I turned my back on that, which is my relationship with God, and yet he's not there to, throw me into the dustbin of history. And in all honesty, I think Judas was offered the same deal, but Judas chose not to. He took his own life.
Mm.
He chose to control and go his own way. He was not, I think he came to an understanding of his brokenness. That's why Judas, you see the money he was given for his betrayal, he went and threw in the temple, and that bought the potter's fields, the way the story goes.
Mm.
So he recognized that he made a huge mistake,
Mm-hmm.
but rather than face himself, he chose to commit suicide. And and I don't say that to say anything about suicide. That's not, I recognize that can be really sensitive, but the point I really want to raise is that he couldn't face himself. And sometimes this journey of vulnerability is the ability to face ourselves and then to be present with others, but starting with God. And we see, like, when we understand that God's not there to give us the, see, I knew you were going to deny me, and
Yeah.
you should have known better. I mean, I told
Yeah.
you. And
Yeah.
what Jesus said was to Peter when he said, it was like, hey, you're going to deny me before this night's out. But he said, I'm going to pray for you that your faith will be strong, or something like it was that, you know, that for his faith to be there.
Is that
to be
the
real.
sift you like wheat passage? Or
I don't know if that's a separate one or not. I mean, my mind's it's not sharp enough to remember
asked
that.
me to sift you.
Yes, I think it might be
all of you, really.
Yes,
the disciples, but I'm praying for you. Yeah.
Yes. I think
it's interesting passage. Yeah.
But you just see the, like, you don't know yourself, but as Peter saw and found himself and recognized who he was and was able to look at himself and see that, to know himself, and then he knew that God knew him and he revealed that.
Yeah, and it's something you said triggered, like, true community for me. Like, for instance, when I'm in recovery relationships with other guys, because that's who I'm close to, it's really men with men, and a man is revealing his issues, what comes to my mind are my issues. I mean, I'm not judgmental or critical of that person because I have my own mountain, my log in my own eye. I think that's, Jesus said, don't judge or you be judged. And the word there is like despise a person, and it's because, before you even point out the speck in your brother's eye, to remove the log in your own eye. And log removal is a lifelong process.
I think in recovery, we will introduce ourselves and we'll say, hey, I'm Sean, I'm a grateful believer in Jesus. And I struggle with, and a lot of times I'll say control, but sometimes I say fantasy, not living in reality, but living in something that's made up in my mind. And on the surface, that can be generic. And it's interesting. I was listening to some sharing the other day, and the person was sharing on, well, everybody has fantasy. Everybody. Few ever reveal that that's the case, but our fantasies and our desire reveal so much about ourselves. And the fact that we're not willing to reveal these things or even talk about or even mention fantasy speaks to shame. The shame says that, hey, whatever it is that I'm fantasizing about, and this doesn't have to be, like, immediately someone might say sexual, or this can be anything. Hey, being the greatest NFL player of all time and just living in that, or but it can be sexual. It can be all these arenas. But it speaks to something about desire. And once you understand your fantasies, you start understanding your desires. And when you understand your desires and are able to communicate those, well, God already knows your desires. He fully knows that, and he still loves you, even though all those things are happening. But if you want to learn about yourself, study your fantasies. Well, try doing that by yourself, and you'll get so far. Be with a group of people who are willing to talk about, not, being crazy about it, but I'm saying talk about their own journeys in this way. All of a sudden, you're going to find that shame goes away, because we all have our struggles and we all have our desires, and we all are looking to be loved, and to be fully known and still loved is one of the greatest gifts that we can give each other. And so I put that out there, not to be.
No, I think in human relationships, the fully known, fully loved is probably experienced pretty well in that kind of a setup. I was thinking about, for me, God's love takes on both a male and female characteristics. And I think about, like, my mom, like a mothering love. She gave birth and then knew all my faults growing up better than I did.
Yeah.
She was in touch with me more than I was.
Yeah.
So I was fully known by her. Obviously, she couldn't know my thoughts, but I was
Yeah.
fully known by her and yet fully loved.
Yeah.
That kind of nurturing, motherly, unconditional
Yeah.
kind of love.
Yeah.
And Dad was the better one with like tough love kind of thing. Like, we're going to put this boundary in because he needs this. And Mom, like I told the story in my book that, if I had robbed a bank, Mom would have had milk and cookies for me and asked me how the bank robbery went. But it's that concept of fully known and fully loved.
Yes.
That's a wonderful, it's like, because it's not conditioned upon, it's unconditional kind of love, but wants the best for us.
Yes, and I like the fact that you mentioned that God has both. I mean, you described the nurture one well, and then sometimes we don't like the fact that God disciplines those He loves, which you kind of put out from your Father's love, is that He put boundaries and discipline in your life, not because He was angry, mean, or vengeful towards you. He loved you enough to do that, and so the mistake could be that, hey, we're only looking for the fluffy. But I think the concept that we're working on today is, you're right. Sometimes in our younger years, our parents know us best. They know whether we're lazy or they're analyzing us. For many of us, as we're growing up, where we're at in our journeys. Somewhere in our teenage years, though, I think we really, that I'll call it the shame core, can become really big, because once you've been bullied a few times or mocked, or you recognize people have picked from a few of your defects, there's a invitation to hide. Shame is an invitation to hide. And you see it in the garden with Adam and Eve. Is like the moment they sinned, shame said, hey, you need to hide yourselves. You're naked. Naked means vulnerable too, in that sense. And so they immediately took that invitation to hide. And so you see God coming into the garden. Where are you? They're hiding. And it wasn't that God didn't know where they were at. It's showing something has happened here. And so I think it's the story of each of our lives. But God's story is the ability to cover our sin and shame and to bring us out of hiding into your real life. And so as we think about it from the cancer journey, why would we be talking about that here? Why is that not just a recovery topic? And I think both of you and I agree that cancer is one of those wall moments, those dark night of the souls. Those are the things that draw you into as an invitation, to open up, to say, hey, I want to experience the best of what God has for me in my life.
Yeah. And I'm, just one thing I thought of right now, in the physical aspect of my journey, I've had to give over control of my physical body to just been so broken through surgeries before, lying in ICU or whatever, just giving my body over, like, go ahead and do anesthesia, cut it up, do what you have to do, treatment, whatever. And it was this just turning over my body at that totally vulnerable, close off, the whole thing for the medical folks. And thinking how that sort of parallels what God wanted to do spiritually in me, because He made that clear to me that in the same way that you're vulnerable here, I want you to be broken and vulnerable here. And that happened through my journey into recovery and everything. So I'm a richer, better person, more happy too, for having gone through both those journeys. To be so vulnerable physically, then spiritually, and now emotionally. Like, I'm much more in touch now and much more expressive of my emotions. Now I cry and when I'm doing my story in front of people. I would have never done that before. Show vulnerability.
That's so good.
That's foreign to me.
I like the picture, like the way you described the picture of your physical journey and how it mirrors a spiritual journey. If you want to find healing, you had to let go. You had to release control in those areas. And the beautiful thing is that what you recognize with the emotional and spiritual side of this is that when you go down this road, shame loses its power.
Mm-hmm. And the parallels happen the whole time. For instance, first of all, the first time plugging up my suprapubic tube, so I had to actually pee with my new setup. And standing there and the gown falling off and having a urinal with 2 nurses and a surgeon, female surgeon, and then a little bit of a tinkle coming out, pushing really hard, and a little bit of a tinkle, and then clapping.
Yes.
Yay
That story.
for Peter.
Yes.
So, but the message I immediately heard in my spirit was, yes, and I want you to be like a child in the other places too, spiritually,
Yeah.
emotionally. Yeah.
Such a great message.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the message that we really wanted to get across. And I just loved it. This came from The Cure, this idea of, hey, if you're putting on the mask, the only thing that can receive love is the mask. And I think that's such a powerful concept.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you want to experience love, you're going to have to reveal who you really are.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you reveal, the more you have the opportunity to be loved in the real. That's a great place to live life from. It's a great place to live marriage from. It is certainly the great place to live a cancer journey from, because when you've done that, and if, cancer is always scary because it comes with the connotation of being deadly. But as you approach your mortality with that, you can go with great peace. You can go into that journey with great peace if you've been vulnerable and know that you're fully exposed to everything about you and still fully loved. And even if there are some who reject you, because I think there will be, God will not. And trust me, there are going to be people that you can find around you that are going to be so encouraged by your vulnerability and by the realness of who you are. It's going to be so attractive. You're going to find people who are on that journey with you. And that's a great community to be in.
That scripture, I will never leave you nor forsake you.
Yes.
And I'm thinking about my own spiritual journey where I thought sin would separate me from God's love. And it doesn't.
Yes, the concept of being separated is not exactly accurate because God he's not any further away than he was, before or after any sin. Our feelings about that, especially when we're hiding it, he feels separate. But he's still right here with us.
Yeah.
And that's why I think the whole concept of vulnerability, exposure, being fully known, it's as if it drops a veil that's there, that it shows us that God's still right there beside us. It proves something to us.
Yeah.
So, and there's a lot of peace in that.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Sean.
Well, that's where we're going to end today. Thank you for listening. Hopefully there's something in here that that encourages you to be fully known and to be vulnerable. And I think when you do, our experience is that you are highly, very loved. And I think in God's economy, he fully loves us. And so we hope that's what you experience in your journey today. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.